How's everybody doing? Hope you had a nice weekend. I'm on the other side now, y'all. I had my 2 weeks immunity. It feels pretty nice, I gotta say. So definitely try to get those vaccines. And if you have the ability, obviously, there's a lot, a lot of difficulty with that, especially for our friends in Canada and the UK and all around the globe. But if you're in the US and it's readily available, I mean, it's time to dive into it because it feels very nice to be on the other side. But welcome everybody to this week's Griscom stream. Hope you all are all doing well wherever you are. Definitely a lot to talk about, and an exciting announcement in a little bit. But for folks who are just joining us for the first time, these are a little bit more relaxed, more like chats. So feel free to jump into the chat and ask questions. We always appreciate super chats, but I try to answer as much as I can. So definitely keep those chats coming in, and I'm curious what y'all are thinking about, because obviously, like, the top line story has been the continuation of the genocide and apartheid system against Palestinian people. It's one of those things where you can really use a lot of strong definitions for what has been done to the Palestinian people over the past few decades, and especially over these past 2 weeks. It's despicable. And one thing that I've been really, really moved by, though, is just the fundamental humanity of the Palestinian people, despite all of these oppressive systems, zeroing in on them. I wanted to open, actually, with a bit of a shout out to the Palestinian people who have now engaged in a massive general strike. Not just in Gaza and in the West Bank, but across Israel as well. It's just an incredible moment to, one, flex your muscles and to remind people of how important your labor is to the functioning of this system, but also as a moment of real unity of Palestinian people. And it's something that is so beautiful, how labor struggles and solidarity and using our powers as workers can really, really bring people together in a way that is very important to building a successful resistance movement against a very, very well organized Israeli state backed by the United States, and the whole military operation there. And, we talked about it yesterday, and people who haven't checked it out yet, we released our conversation with Derek Davison on Bidenism in his first few months of what Biden's foreign policy is looking like. And obviously the most striking example of that, right now, is the fact that Biden, while all of this is going on, when you're starting to see some cracks in the Democratic Party regarding, their just unwavering support of Israel's apartheid regime, you're starting to see some cracks. And yet Biden comes back, very, very much old school American president, and fully backs Netanyahu. In fact, doesn't even present much criticism to what Israel has been doing. I know today he sort of said, like, if you don't tamper this down a little bit, then I won't be able to help you out too much longer. But it's pretty soft criticism, especially given the fact that Biden also gave him $35 million in an arms deal. Approved another insane arms deal to Israel as they're using these weapons against civilians. And don't even get me started on this disgusting talking point that we've been getting from folks in the United States trying to defend Israel's bombing of civilian buildings. The AP building obviously is one that has been getting a lot of attention, and I definitely am of the mindset that I understand why it's worth leaning into that and using it as an example of how egregious Israel's attacks are against the Palestinian people. But I also would probably start with now dozens upon dozens of people who have been murdered in their homes, rather than being only worried about journalism. Now, don't get me wrong, what Israel's doing there is just absolutely disgusting and despicable, and it's one of those things that works up American liberals and Europeans, unfortunately, more than just the general human suffering. But so again, use that tactically to make sure that people understand the reality of the situation. But let's also not act like the worst thing that's happened has been Israel targeting media buildings. And that being said, I mean, the fact that that they are literally targeting, they're not coming after media organizations that are run by like RT, or something like that. They're coming at Al Jazeera, they're coming at the AP, reputable like media publications and organizations out there that in no way, shape, or form are, as some people have been insinuating, controlled by Hamas. These are folks who are covering a war zone for major Western publications. It's just extremely unbelievable to see how brazen Israel is in targeting them. People are, mentioning in the chat is like they bombed a COVID testing hospital. I mean, that's the thing. Is like these are war crimes. When you started, throwing people and taking people out of their houses in itself is already a war crime. But the indiscriminate targeting of civilians, of hospitals, of medical facilities, it's just there's no other way to talk about this. And the only reason that you don't see as strong of an international condemnation about this is because of the U.S. stranglehold over the UN and international organizations. I think, and thank you so much, Daniel, for the super chat there. And yeah, 'cause some people are asking some questions, and we'll get to Chile in a minute, because that's also some good and important news. But we're going to talk with a friend of mine, I think on Monday, Jace, for patrons next week, about the U.S. and the U.K. and the way that Israel-Palestine is being covered. Because it has been amazing to see the breakthrough in the United States, in particular. I remember a time, during the 2014, and during 2014 when Israel was, ramping up their murders and terror campaign against Palestinian people, not really feeling like anybody was covering it. And if you were to be saying the kind of things that, we're saying today, you would very quickly be attacked or more often than not just ignored, right? So there has been a huge shift in the way that people are talking about Israel-Palestine in the United States, and I think that's an encouraging thing. And I don't think that we should get into, fall into the mistake of, of being so cynical that we can't celebrate. I mean, we shouldn't be celebrating, but see that this is a positive development for the cause of human freedom in Palestine. It's been really incredible to see. If my audio is quiet, I'll bump it up a little bit. Sorry about that. I'm using this new system, so it's a little finicky for me. But yeah. So this opening is really great. And look, I think that it's worth noting, that people like AOC and people in the squad and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, have been, opening up a lot of space. But that has only come because there has been such an outcry from the public. I mean, this doesn't originate in the halls of Congress. This originates because there's people in the streets, and seeing people from Brooklyn to Miami to Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, showing up and saying that no more in our name. It's been a really encouraging thing to see. The point and the thing that we need to be doing right now is to not let the flashpoint go away, right? Because, these things happen and they get a lot of attention in the U.S. media, and then, things go, it falls back into the news cycle. Because every day, Israel is oppressing and dehumanizing Palestinian people. Every day they're throwing people out of their homes. Every day they are taking bulldozers and running over olive trees. This is a constant reality for folks. And I think it's important to keep the spotlight on this as long as it takes to get freedom for folks. So what's been happening in the U.S. has been really exciting. I'm curious to see, I know there's a lot of people on the ground fighting in the UK too for a shift, but that's a country that has really, really had a pretty public struggle with criticisms of Israel, since that was used as the way to take out, Jeremy Corbyn. So I'm really looking forward to having that conversation on Monday. And hopefully the pressure keeps up and we don't allow folks to fall back. I mean, it's funny to see, like, oh man, sorry, I forgot about Brett Stevens. Did y'all see that this morning? Brett Stevens, who has a long-standing relationship with paid relationship with the pro-Israel lobbying group, put out just, I guess it was yesterday, just this absurd piece. Let me see, I can share it with y'all, I think. In the New York Times today. And this is just such a reminder. These people, it's been interesting to see people like Brett Stevens and Barry Weiss and Dershowitz, who was showing up today in the Hill, which is always going to make me laugh. Seeing them, sort of freak out, I think is encouraging, that like they do recognize that there's a shift. But he puts this piece out today. Oh, damn. Did that not work for you? If the left got its wish for Israel, imagine an alternative universe in which an enlightened Israeli government did almost everything progressive America demanded of it. Just nasty little bedbug Brett here. I mean, doing something that I rhetorically always pisses me off, where it's like, I'm going to make up a scenario and then, like stick to that as if that's any kind of reflection of reality. Basically he is arguing here that, it's really important that Israel controls Palestine's borders. It's really important that they prevent them from getting, they're not able to control their own trade. Okay, sorry that the thing went black on y'all. I don't know. It's just such a joke watching these people, and I think that we're moving on and continuing to highlight how absurd it is that they're doing this. I want to do this. I'm sorry, the thing broke on me. Let me see if I could do another way of sharing my screen with y'all. Make sure I don't have anything goofy on my thing. All right, there we go. Somebody says, check out the hyperlinked. I haven't done this yet. Check out the hyperlinked. Let's see. Yeah, we got. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it's lazy stuff. At the New York Times over this, it's very much. It's been a joke for a long time, and I'm just happy that it's starting to be accepted, to be more critical about it. It's been very funny watching the woke. There's the two main like Twitter villains have been like the woke intersectional woman who's talking about holding space for like observant Zionists, and the other guy too, who goes from saying that the problem is that America, that Hamas is not progressive, but also that woke culture is, is making it is a cancer, and that's allowing, us to, it's allowing anti-Semitism to, take over our country, and we're seeing that because people are finally criticizing Palestine for murdering people in their houses. Thanks, Antonio, for the super chat there. I'll have to look a little bit deeper to see those hyperlinks. I didn't want to waste everybody's time with that if I wasn't able to find them up top. Jacob says, did you catch this? Some U.S. officials during the Gaza bombing said that Xinjiang is an open-air prison. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just American, hypocrisy there. Well, let me see, y'all. I want to talk about Chile, but maybe let's make this big announcement since we're sort of early in, because I'm excited for this. It's going to be a good time. The big announcement is that this weekend we're going to be doing a little solidarity event, Matt and I, with our friends from the Valley Labor Report. And let me share my screen with y'all real quick. For folks who aren't familiar, one of the largest strikes of, active ongoing strikes is ongoing right now. 1,100 workers in in Alabama have been on strike since, I believe, April 1st. They have been met with incredibly abusive strike-breaking tactics, and scabs showing up drunk at people's houses in the middle of the night. I talked about last week these horrifying leaks that are being found in watersheds around the area from these mines, meaning that the scabs are either deliberately dumping into the community's water supply, or they're doing such a sloppy job and they're ignoring, basic environmental regulations and protections, right? Despite all of this, the workers continue to stand on the picket line, and it's been very, very much inspiring. They've taken the abuses of the strike breakers, and also the abuses from a bunch of whack jobs at the World Socialist website. We got to show support for these people, not just because of, we want to make sure that they understand that socialists and leftists stand with them in their struggle, despite what a bunch of LARPers were trying to do to derail their movement, but also because this is how we build working class solidarity in general. The bosses know that the way that they can defeat labor is by trying to starve them out, that preventing them from getting access to a wage that they need to be able to provide food and stuff for their families, right? This is where we can really flex our muscle as a community to say, we're not going to let the bosses use the purse to discipline labor, right? We're going to provide funds that are needed for the community. And let me show y'all where y'all can donate and show up. So this weekend, I'll put this in the chat just so it's easier for folks. Where do I have to go? Gotta do it here. There we go. So this weekend, anyways, our friends at the Valley Labor Report are going to be doing a huge marathon stream along with a really exciting event in Alabama. I wish I could drive over there for it. They're going to have music and barbecue and chili. Here we go. I'm going to share this with y'all. Man, why is it? Okay, that works now. Look at this. So this is at thevalleylaborreport.org/mutual/aid. And in this, so this Saturday, there is going to be a concert with Mike Cooley from Drive By Truckers, Lee Baines and the Glory Fires, and homegrown UMWA talent. There'll be comedy, and there's going to be food cooked by the AFL-CIO's barbecue pitmasters and chili cookers. So if you are in the Alabama area, you can buy a ticket to attend the concert, the benefit concert. Coal miners eat for free, obviously. So check that out. And then what we'll be doing online as this is going on, they're going to be doing at the Valley Labor Report a kind of marathon stream from early Friday morning to Sunday afternoon. Matt Leck and I are going to be hanging out for a late night stream, a little midnight beer session at 11 Central to 12 a.m. Central. So midnight Eastern Time, 1 a.m. Eastern Time. And that's going to be Friday night. Really looking forward to that. So if people want to, donate ahead of time, you can use these links on the website. If you're attending, use this first link. If you're just trying to throw some money to show solidarity, use the second link. And Matt and I are going to be hanging out either with Jacob or David Story, maybe watching some videos, relaxing a little bit, taking questions from the chat. I think we're trying to set up a phone line so y'all can call in and we can hang out. So definitely, join us on Friday night and raise some money for these striking workers, because it's a really important fight, and I'm excited for it. Charles Raintree says, "I never thought I'd say this, but roll tide." Yeah, I wonder if that's. I don't know if where people's allegiances lie there. I mean, obviously, University of Alabama is the Titan, but I wonder if there's some Auburn supporters. I've never asked David or Jacob if they follow football, but I'd be curious. All right. Yeah. Yeah, man, I'd love to do the World Socialist website thing again, but I did it last week and it really pisses me off. But they're just like a bunch of LARPers, and they essentially what they did here, I can just tell you, is they want to make this big point about how workers actually don't like the union. It's their big MO, and essentially like their version of Trotskyism is just like a deep, deep suspicion of any kind of existing organization, except for theirs, obviously. And they interviewed workers who voted down the first contract that was negotiated, and they try to use that to prove that the workers rising up against the labor aristocracy. And that's not at all how the striking workers felt or thought about what they were doing. They were looking out for themselves, but they were very happy to be represented and to be in a union. They were happy to be members of the union. So they basically they did this huge article where they misrepresented the workers and what they said, and it just got to such a point where when Jacob and other folks were talking to people at the picket line, they had to like get through a bit of suspicion, where workers are like, "Oh, are you one of those socialists? We don't like them," and that's absolutely devastating. So I think it's worthwhile to show up. If we can show up a little bit stronger than the World Socialist website, I think will be helpful. Oh my God. Look, somebody's trying to say stuff about this. The people who were interviewed in the World Socialist website piece said that their quotes were misrepresented by the World Socialist website. I don't know how many times this has to be said. If you think that you know better than these people, that's on you, right? But I'm sorry. It's very clear what happened here, and it's very clear that the World Socialist website folks are showing up with an agenda, and that's not to develop consciousness. That's not to talk to people. That's to try to fit in a prepackaged narrative that they want to put forward, right? I'm sorry. It's not analysis. It's not organizing. All right. So anyways, join us on Friday for that. It'll be a good time. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Well, why don't we show, actually, you want to talk about some people who are doing important organizing. Thanks, John, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of y'all so much. It's been a really incredible early launch of Left Reckoning, and I'm happy to be able to cover these stories and do this kind of work. Did y'all see in Texas right now, Governor Abbott is pulling off the dumbass Governor Abbott is now canceling unemployment benefits for people who are jobless. It's amazing to watch this. David Sirota had a pretty decent piece, though he did the cliche about everything bigger in Texas, which just gets a little old after a little, I have to say. But they're covering, they're ending jobless benefits, joining some other southern states like South Carolina. And I'll tell y'all that Governor McMaster has been on one for the past couple of weeks, from canceling unemployment benefits for people, bringing back firing squads. But so Texas is ending these unemployment benefits, and this is just part of a long-standing war that we've been seeing, where there is this slight uptick in benefits that were going to workers. People had a little bit of money in their pocket, and they were refusing the most abusive working conditions out there, right? We're talking about minimum wage jobs. We're talking about jobs where people are constantly feeling under threat. And a reason those jobs are able to exist is because you have that threat of losing your house, not being able to feed yourself or your family, right? That's how capital tries to discipline labor, by having the threat of unemployment always on your back, right? And it's a big reason why wages have declined in this country for so long. What the unemployment benefits did, they didn't open up anything particularly radical for folks, but they just made it so the worst scenario was avoidable for many workers. And now, as they're trying to get people to come back to work in these jobs, a lot of people don't want to. Along with the fact that a lot of people are still dealing with severe illnesses that they picked up in those kind of jobs, especially if you're somebody like a line cook, which was one of the hardest hit professions in the country when it came to COVID-19. People aren't coming back to work these bad jobs. And of course, all of these employers who always are talking about, the efficiency of the market and things like that, they don't like to actually compete. They want us to compete with one another. They don't want to have to compete with each other when it comes to wages. So they lobbied them, and I think it's worth understanding that not only is what Abbott doing harmful, not only is ending unemployment harmful, but the business class understands that if working people have a bare minimum that is available to them, they will not be able to exploit people at the rates that they have grown accustomed to. And that's why, Greg Abbott didn't just do this on his own. He had been lobbied like crazy from organizations like the Texas Association of Business. Another horrible organization, the Chamber of Commerce, has been running like crazy trying to get the federal government to end their unemployment, the extension on unemployment benefits, because they represent the interest of big capital against working people. So all the memes and all that other stuff, yeah, that's ground war. That's like, people just trying to ideologically pummel people. It's always sad to see, and I was joking last week, I see cousins of mine who I know are broke as shit, posting these like anti-unemployment memes, right? But that's just like the ideological aspect of living in American capitalism, where they try to pit workers against workers, right? The real money, the real power here is organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, who have been lobbying like crazy to end these protections for workers, because they understand that it's not in their interest to have people be empowered on any level. It's really, really, really nasty stuff, along with the fact, too, that while Abbott is doing this, right, so we need the free market. We need to, encourage people to pick themselves up. Texas is not a state that's built on handouts, unless you're a rich asshole who owns a lot of property, because they're going to extend Chapter 313, which funnels incredible amounts of money to corporations who own large properties, basically by cutting off their property taxes. And guess what boy's about to benefit from that one? America's favorite government contractor, glorified government contractor, Elon Musk, who's set to rake in a few tens of millions of dollars from this extension as he continues to damage the area around Austin, and also what he's doing in South Texas has been horrible has been horrible with SpaceX. It's just so nasty. They've basically taken over this small town, I believe, a bit north of Brownsville, and are throwing out long-term residents. He was trying to change the name of it the other week. It's just disgusting to see, the hypocrisy of the rhetoric. But again, I think it's like, that's like, so, okay, it's a hypocrisy for the Republicans to cut unemployment benefits for folks who are still living through a pandemic, right? While they're also giving tax breaks to people like Elon Musk, right? To the tune of tens of millions of dollars, right? Yes, there's hypocrisy there. It sucks. And I think, obviously call that out. But as Marxists and socialists, you have to understand the structural reason why that works, instead of just being like, oh, well, this doesn't fit or jibe with conservatism. Conservatism is not a internally coherent ideology. It's a shell to sell incredibly reactionary, working class breaking politics to the masses. It does not stand on its own as like an ideological process. So Abbott, giving out tens of millions of dollars to super wealthy folks, Abbott and Bush, And all of these assholes who have basically been enriching their friends, along with Rick Perry, for decades now in Texas, who put up our electrical grid to basically be cannibalized by a few assholes, exposing everybody to this horrible storm, and continue to expose us by us having an electrical grid that is potentially just moments away from disaster at all times, right? You could say, oh, yeah, it sucks. Oh, there's a hypocrisy there. What happened to small government, and let people work, all that kind of stuff. Understand that conservatism is not an ideology that is based on any real principles. It is a shell so that people in the general public do not realize that these people are just operating nakedly as the bludgeon of big business. And Matthew says Governor Eric Holcomb, is that Indiana, just announced he's doing the same with unemployment in Indiana. It's ridiculous, even though unemployment is back to pre-COVID levels here. Look, and they're going to do it. We're going to see it across the South. And here's the thing. Biden's already gotten really timid on it. And that's one thing that Matt and I were trying to call out the other week. You'll see how quickly Biden sort of walks back from being this kind of radical progressive who's going to change everything. So it's just an absolute joke. But we're going to see them pull this back because it's been one of our biggest criticisms of Biden is that this is not somebody who is wanting to operate. You have to do a lot of intervention just because of what COVID has done to the American economy. The American economy is a consumer economy. You have to have consumers, right? So they've tried to get the pipes to flow a little bit towards, general people. But you see how it's not really structural, right? That's why they sort of waved aside, demands for higher minimum wage, and why you're already seeing rhetorically them laying the groundwork to walk back from continuing these benefits for folks. Ronan Wolf says that they're from Brownsville and they're trying to figure out where Elon Musk is. You can read it. The Texas Monthly just had a big one. It's a really small town. I mean, not many people live there. That's why Musk went out there. But it's just disgusting to see the way that he's acting. He's Boca Chica. And Elon Musk, I know too, is like donating a lot of money to Brownsville as well. They're trying to take over. They're trying to take over these towns, and basically, when you have like incredible disinvestment from communities like that, you're not going to, you're not really going to be in a position as a city or a town to say no to somebody who says they're going to give you millions of dollars to help fund your schools, which Elon Musk is doing, right? And I think it's really, really nasty. I know everyone is going to praise him. It's like, oh, look, he cares about local employment, and he cares about local education. No, he knows that these are underfunded communities, and if you start to become a very important tool in doing some kind of basic funding, then it's going to be a lot harder for these cities and these local governments to say no to you when you are pillaging the community, when you're pillaging the land, and when you're doing things against the wills of the general public. I mean, that's the deal. Ronan Wolf, I don't know. I don't know too much else about it other than that name. I don't know. Janos someone's in here saying that there's been one-sidedness in the reporting. From where? I mean, who's covering this other than people who are on the left or people who are in the union movement in general? I don't know, man. It's like if you feel like the goal of like being in the American left right now is to be anti-union, I don't know. I don't know if I can help you. And, I don't think that, then luckily that's not the line of any major left-wing or socialist organization in the U.S. I think And before you get worked up, I think there are lots of criticisms about the way that the American labor system functions. I think the fact that we don't have, cross industry unions for the most part is not helpful. I think that you can look at other ways of, organizing labor that are better than the American version. But if you think that that's going to come out of breaking what is left of American labor, you're delusional. When we're seeing people who are fighting with their lives to extend the rights of labor and extend the rights of unions, and you find yourself on the opposite side because you have some kind of esoteric take on American labor history and American labor unions, then I think you should take a second and think about if you are actually fighting and representing working class people. I just don't find that to be, a very, very powerful critique these days. Yeah. Yeah. So Ronan says, living in Brownsville, the beaches to go to were Boca Chica or South Padre Island, and South Padre Island is a bit too much like a resort for us poor folks. And now Boca Chica has been taken away as well. Yeah. I mean, the stories we're hearing from what it's like living there with SpaceX are horrifying. That you just sort of get out of nowhere an alert that they're doing rocket testing and you have to stay inside. It's really, really a joke. Let me see. I don't want to miss anything because we have a lot to cover on Thursday, so I don't want to spoil any of those stories. Maybe just for fun, let me share some pictures because last week, what's up, Autumn? Last week I used this picture as the the screen for the screen for the stream, and I had meant to explain it to y'all, and I think a couple people noticed it in the chat, but so y'all see this picture here. We used this last week as the background. If you see right there at the top, that is Eugene Debs and his visit to meet with the Texas Socialist Party. I think back in let me see if I have it right here. I think it might have been 1912, but I could be wrong about that. It is a fun little story. It's always interesting to read about, there's a lot of Germans moved to Texas in the late 19th century, including Karl Marx. I don't know if people know that or not, but Karl Marx actually tried to immigrate to Texas, and he was blocked by the government from immigrating for Texas because you didn't have freedom of movement back then. Not that you really do today, but you literally could not be allowed to leave your country then. So anyways, Karl Marx was trying to move out to central Texas, where there's a huge German population, and a lot of the early American socialist movement was very much rooted here in Texas. It's just an interesting little story to think about, and it's also important when we have this kind of hegemonic reading of American history, because I know, like, you become a leftist in the U.S. and you spend your whole life getting propaganda about how great America is, and still it's a democracy, and it stands for freedom. And then you become a leftist and you realize, oh wow, the founding fathers were pigs. Oh wow, this system is not built on liberty. This is a system that's built on genocide and exploitation and slavery, right? And that's a really important realization to make. But I also think it's important too not to flatten American history either, because when you do that, then you miss the fact that for every bad thing that was happening in this country, there were people who were resisting. There were people who had a different vision and different hopes and different aspirations for what the United States could be, or this land could be. I think it's important not to flatten history, to know that we're not the first people to realize that this was wrong. There are plenty of people in those times who knew that system was wrong and were actively fighting to oppose it. And they lost, but we should see ourselves as part of that tradition, right? To recognize that it's just as an American tradition As much as there's an American tradition of evil, there's an incredible American tradition of resistance and of socialism and of working class movements, and holding on to that is really important. Yeah, it's just it's a really really interesting little story. Oh man, I'm missing beer chat in the chat right now. Ronan says their family had to move into the Texas interior, and someone said Shiner beer. I love Shiner Bock. Um, Shiner Bock is one of my favorite beers. I like Lone Star a lot too. If I'm feeling really really broke and nostalgic, I'll drink Pearl beer too, which people who are outside Texas might have never seen before. But it's one of the older beers in the country, and maybe one day I'll tell you all the story. But the founder was a really interesting guy who got caught up in this insane murder mystery with 3 women. I can't remember what their name was. It was something like Mary or Alice or something like that. But he just kept on falling in love with all these women with the same names, and it's very likely that one of them killed him. But maybe I'll review that and tell you all that story a little bit later. All right, y'all. Unless anyone has any questions, I might dip out here. I'm getting my computer's running a little low on battery. Here you go, Lone Star Beer and Bob Wills music. I think that's the way to go out. And well, this week we have a really good show for y'all. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be talking in depth about the incredible victory in Chile. We'll talk a little bit more about the move to movements towards a more international American left. I'm looking forward to that. I also want to talk a little bit about political education and why it's important, because one thing I'll just sort of leave y'all with a taste of that. Like, it's been really exciting to see all the development on the Palestine question in the United States, where people are realizing that the system is evil, and they're questioning the narrative that they've been taught their whole life. They're questioning America's role in the world. And they are starting to recognize that the Palestinian struggle is, an anti-colonial struggle, it's a human rights struggle, and it's a global struggle that's going to need international solidarity to meet. This is something that I think general people in the general public are starting to wrestle with and grapple with. And a great example of that is spend any time on social media, and you'll see a lot of people who are desperate for information. And I think it's good that people are trying to meet that need. But the whole time I've just been thinking, this is a shame that we don't have stronger political education arms out here to drive up recruitment into socialist organizations. And it's also a shame that these things aren't all being framed, in the best way. Again, I think it's good to see people in the United States recognize, that this system is wrong, and that the United States has a lot of culpability in it, and we need to do something about it. But I get worried when you start to see these very concrete and materialist problems become a bit liberalized. They don't have the precision that is needed. And I mean by that is just just random things that people are interacting with on the internet. Again, I think the proliferation of that is good, but it's just, okay, here's a lack where if we had a stronger propaganda arm or, political education arm of our left socialist movements right now, we could be doing a lot of recruitment, but also a lot of education that not just helps people know what's going on and know the right thing from the wrong thing, that kind of stuff, but it helps people understand how to act, right? We're against apartheid, the apartheid system in Israel. What do you need to be, focusing your attention on if you want to advocate to change that, right? And sometimes a lot of popular education on these things is a little bit less about call to action beyond just sort of donating places. And I think that, we need to wrestle with that. And that's why preparing and having a strong political education arms is important. And I remember when people like got all worked up about this, when you talk about politics, say like, well, electoral politics isn't everything, right? And it's not. And then the quick retort that everybody says like, okay, well, I'm happy to go to a protest. And you realize there that just like the way that most people conceptualize like political activity in the U.S., isn't fully developed, because political education isn't just like, oh, I want to make sure me and my friends like get it, man. No, political education is arming ourselves with the knowledge that is necessary to take meaningful and purposeful action. So I think that we'll talk a little bit about that in depth on Thursday as well. And let me see. So, William, I had a conversation, man, it must have been on TMBS still, with Daniel Finn about Corbyn and the anti-Semitism question. And I think one thing that we've learned is that you really have to hit hard back at those accusations. You can't even give them a little bit of credence. Again, this doesn't mean deny actually existing anti-Semitism. And I know Labor and like the UK society in general has like a little bit of a deeper rooted issue with this than in the US. But, so again, it's not ignoring it, but it's knowing, okay, this is BS. When you're saying that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite, that's crap. And you're just, and you're lying, and you're trying to slander somebody with something that most people aren't comfortable with touching or questioning. And it was an extremely effective tactic. Hell, they tried to do it against Bernie Sanders, which was absurd, but they did all the time. And I think that we need to be smart about that. And it's not something that's just unique to lobbying and conflating, anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel. It's something in general that I think our opponents know, that since a lot of people on the left are operating in good faith and they do want to have, a world free of, oppression and bigotry, that it's a very effective fire to start accusing people of things of that nature, because people will take it seriously. And I think I think that we need to start being more and more prepared for that. All right, y'all. Catch us Thursday at 8 p.m. and then Friday night at 11 Central time at night. We're going to be having a little beer stream and fundraiser for the striking coal workers, miners in Alabama. So definitely join us for that. All right. See y'all around.